Hey guys, those of you who are joining me from my page, I'm with Dr. Danique Woolfolk. This is a special person, went to Oakwood with her. She's actually a graduate from Oakwood College, now university. She had her degree in biology, minor in chemistry, and then she took some time off to raise a family, raise children. She has 2 children, married with 2 children, and they're college ages themselves. It's crazy. We're old. And she went on after raising her children. I think your youngest was in kindergarten. That's what you said, right? That you started medical school at Indiana University and transitioned over to a dermatology resident. You did your dermatological residence at Texas Tech, I guess, in Texas. I'm Lubbock, Texas. So this is a dermatologist. I always wanted to talk to a dermatologist about their path. And I said, you know what? I have so many special physicians in my line. That's the beauty of going to Oakwood and being a biology major, that there's lots of connections. So I said, okay, let me talk to Danique. So before we get into what I really want to talk about, which is the ailments of African Americans in dealing with our hair and our skin, what was your path to becoming a dermatologist?
Well, I did not start out with that as my goal. I'll be honest with you. I'll give you a little background. A lot of people may not know. A lot of people that I went to Oakwood with. My dad is a dermatologist.
Did not know that.
Yeah. So he went to Loma Linda University School of Medicine. He's an Oakwood graduate, went to Loma Linda. He did his residency out in California, and then he moved to Dallas area, where I was raised, and he's the first Black dermatologist in Dallas, Texas. So I knew that I wanted to do medicine, but I never really put a lot of emphasis on dermatology. I thought that I had studied dermatology, but went back, took the MCAT, had never taken it earlier, got accepted, and in Indiana University School of Medicine is where we ended up, more due to the fact that we were close to a family. But interestingly enough, when I was in medical school, I, number one, found out or rediscovered, I should say, the lack of diversity in dermatology. And I think that was something that, my dad always tried to represent to us, but, sometimes
you don't listen to it. Yeah, you don't understand it. Yeah.
But so I got some opportunities to shadow people who were not my family, not my dad, and just, enjoyed the diversity and, being able to do clinic, meaning where you're seeing patients, treating, you can do surgery, we do pathology. So, things that we biopsy or surgically remove, we diagnose underneath the microscope. And then we do cosmetics. And in dermatology, you can choose and kind of create your practice depending upon, your interests. So when I finished Indiana University School of Medicine, did my residency at Texas Tech, I decided during that time when I was going through training that I did want to specialize more in skin of color.
Okay.
So my primary practice is primarily ethnic skin. So I would say probably 85% plus of my patients are of those darker skin complexion.
Wow. And I didn't know that. I didn't even know that. Okay, cool. What was your greatest challenge in school? So you were brilliant. I remember you in
I don't know about being brilliant.
Maybe I just had the false perception. I don't know. I just thought you were so smart. Okay.
Yeah, I think I work hard. And I think that's a good thing to and I'm glad you kind of bring that up, because a lot of times people are sometimes off-put about going into medicine because they're like, oh, I'm not naturally smart. I'm not
Right.
born with this, this mind. I never thought that I was born with this mind. But I did feel like that was one thing that my parents instilled in me, particularly my mother. I mean, I was homeschooled for like my high school years, is that how our hard work can outperform smarts any day.
Any day.
And so it's just, basically believing that you can do it, putting forth the effort, getting help when you need to. I think anybody can do it, honestly.
I agree, but I tell my students all the time, biology is not for the smart, it's for the prepared.
That's right. That's a
You
good
know,
way to put it. But to get back to your question as far as the greatest challenge, medical school and any professional school is on a different level than college. It's a big step to go from high school to college.
Mhm.
It's a big step to go from college to medical school. I think my greatest challenge is that I had a big break from the time that I finished my undergraduate work till the time that I started medical school. So I wasn't a traditional student. A lot of times they will classify it as more of a non-traditional student. So I had a lot of time away from the books. So basically kind of getting back into that regimen of studying, but again, going back to that hard work, being organized. My youngest was in kindergarten. My oldest was in first grade. They went to bed at about 7 o'clock at nighttime, and I studied from 7 to 12 every night, and thankfully they were young then. I couldn't get away with it with that, probably with them as teenagers. But the timing was right.
Yeah.
And so, we just had a strict schedule. And the other thing, I think I had a great support system. So, my husband, spent a lot of weekends. So, on Sundays when I was studying all day, he would take the kids and keep them busy and, take them to the park or wherever. And I didn't get an opportunity to study with a lot of my classmates just because of
you had a family
at home.
Yeah.
But just, learning to adjust when there were challenges. And I tell everybody this, first test in medical school, gross anatomy, I failed.
Mm-hmm.
And, it wasn't like, oh, well, I can't do this anymore. Might as well pack up my bags and, keep moving. It's, well, let me get back up, figure out what I need to do, get in the professor's office, learn what I need to learn so I can pass the class.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the mindset that I took with pretty much everything.
Yeah, I was talking to another colleague, colleague who I brought to my institution to actually talk to people, and he openly says he failed micro. He failed his first micro tests, and he struggled through micro. It's so important for people to understand who's going through medical school. That is very important to study, but you don't have to necessarily feel like you have to ace everything. And in life comes failure. I was a couple of students, they were complaining about, oh my God, nothing worked. Like they did a lab and nothing worked. I said, and that's life. Like we're always messing up. I'm like, and that's life. Life comes with failure. But the fact that you decided that, in spite of you failing that first gross anatomy test, you dusted yourself off. That's right. I love that. So I remember David Josie, he said that, no, it was Damaris. She said that it's like sipping water through a fire hydrant with a straw.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to describe it. Until you've done it, it's hard to explain. It's just extremely hard to explain. And I think, of course, the volume of the material is there, and I think anybody can learn to manage. And of course, thousands of people a year learn to manage the volume of the material. I think part of a challenge, especially with African-American students, is learning to take the tests also.
Right.
Because they don't stop, okay? MCAT is just the beginning, okay?
Yeah.
And then there's your multiple tests through medical school.
It's your boards.
It's your boards, it's your certification boards after that, and then your recertification boards when you're done. So it's, you're never going to get away from it. I think for me, that was something also that I had to learn how to take the tests.
Mm-hmm.
And, just one tip for me was that it was, if I could practice the topics, like there's so many resources now for questions on certain topics that you can find anywhere.
On the internet, yeah.
So on the internet. So if you can test yourself in multiple ways before somebody else tests you, you usually will master most of the material. Now that means you could either make your own tests, but there's so many resources now where you can buy, question banks and things like that, just doing them. And there's actually been a few studies that have been done where they, especially like for the steps, step 1, step 2, step 3, they found that the higher scores correlated with the number of practice questions that people took before they took those tests.
Right. Wow. So test taking, not just getting the volume, but mastering the test taking for students of color. You guys hear that? It's so important. But you're not going to get away from it. You're not going to get away from it. And you're not going to get away from the need to work hard and study hard. All right. So that was your challenge, but you made it. You're currently practicing, right? You're in private practice. Awesome. My question to you is, there are not that many Black dermatologists. Like, well, I mean, there's 2 in your family, but that's like shout out to keeping it in the family, but it's not common. So what do you think is the reason behind the lack of diversity in dermatology? Because it's an awesome profession. It's an awesome, first of all, it's one of the hardest, am I right? It's one of the hardest residencies to get in.
It is.
So shout out to Danique Woolfolk. She says she's not a genius, but trust me on this one. All right, it's one of the hardest residencies to get in, and there's not much. And I feel like there's a lot of, push to cosmetology for African Americans. What do you think is the reason why there's a lack of diversity?
So let me answer your first question. So I think the lack of diversity is due to lack of exposure, honestly. Okay. How many people, or maybe that you even know, go to dermatologists regularly that are African American? Not a lot. Okay.
Right.
And that's due to one of many issues. Okay. One, and studies have shown this multiple times, as far as in our community, we tend to go to doctors that look like us, and we tend to stay more consistent with treatment plans from doctors who look like us. Okay. So, I have patients all the time who come to me and say, hey, I did have this condition long ago, and I went to a particular dermatologist, and I feel like they, 1, cared, 2, they didn't really look at it, 2, they didn't really touch it, and I just figured I just wouldn't go back. Okay. So, number 1, people don't get exposed to it. Number 2, it is very competitive to get into, and so, but I don't think that should deter anybody.
Right.
I think that there's opportunities and there's many routes, I think, of getting there for someone who wants to do it. The most important thing is to, shadow early, do research, express interest, especially when you're in medical school with your dermatology department, get letters of recommendation. If you don't get in the first time, sometimes you do a research year, and then reapply. I think the American Academy of Dermatology, which is our national organization, does recognize that there is a need for more opportunities, I'll say, for lack of a better word. And there are mentoring opportunities within the field, especially for people who are college age or even in medical school, to be, matched with a dermatologist, if they are people of color and they're wanting to be matched with someone that's currently practicing in the field to get a little bit more exposure. If you go to the American Academy of Dermatology website, they have some information about that.
Okay. All right. So why do you think? So basically, you're answering the second question. People want to do cosmetology because Black little girls have been going to cosmetologists, hairdressers, basically, since we can ever remember. Right?
So cosmetology, so that's a good, so first, kind of this distinction, what's kind of the difference? Dermatology versus cosmetology. Dermatology is, of course, more the study and the treatment of skin disease. And then cosmetology is basically more beautification of the skin using cosmetics. Okay, that's where people do esthetician training, exactly what you said. The hairstylists, the barbers, all of those are going to fall under kind of that cosmetology field. They have their role. They have
absolutely.
Their role, but kind of if you think about history a little bit, as far as, and I can't quote years of when all this, but think of like Madam C.J. Walker.
Right.
She was the first one that started, this major business that helped women to be able to style their hair a little bit better, and such and such. And so now we have this multi-million-dollar industry of hair care products, that has kind of expanded. Well, then people say, well, what can we do at home to make our skin look better? They may not have had a specific skin disease or skin condition, but they wanted to improve their appearance. So now we have this multi-million-dollar skincare industry. Okay, and so all of these people are cosmetologists, are probably more in that realm as far as beautification. Now, is there some overlap a little bit? Absolutely. Okay, because healthy skin is definitely important to get the best appearance of your skin overall, but there is a difference, I would say, in general, as far as the skin disease versus the beautification.
Exactly. And so they have more access to the skin beautification rather than understanding the biology of the skin, even though a career in the biology of the skin will make so much more money than I mean, no insult to the cosmetologist. No, I'm just playing. But seriously, and there's a misconception. Well, I don't believe it's a myth or anything. We say to each other that Black don't crack. Yeah. Right? We say that. And so, like, why do I need to go to a dermatologist? Yeah. Black don't crack. But the reality is there are some skin issues that we face, and especially even hair issues that we face. So my next question to you is, what are the greatest ailments in the Black community in regards to skin and hair?
Okay, so I'll break it down, skin versus hair. We'll start with skin first. So I would say probably, and there actually, interestingly, have been a number of studies where they have compared what are the most common complaints or diagnoses that are seen among people who present with skin of color, particularly African American, Hispanic, Asian skin versus Caucasians. And what they found is that with individuals who have ethnic skin, pigmentation, hyperpigmentation is probably going to be one of the number one concerns. Secondly, and these are all in the top 5, and I may not be telling them exactly in the order, but hyperpigmentation, acne, hair loss, eczema, let me see, I think I might have had what the reference, seborrheic dermatitis, I forgot about that. That's actually fairly common. Are probably the top ones, whereas if you compare it to the top conditions that are seen in Caucasian skin, acne is going to be up there, pigmentation is going to be nowhere on the list.
Right.
Okay. Hair loss is going to be way, way, way lower on the list. Skin cancer is going to be number 2 or number 3.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Caucasian skin. And then you'll get other things like psoriasis and warts and things like that. In my practice, I would say it's very, well, again, I'll kind of give you a little, my patient population is, I would say, primarily female. It's going to be 60-70% female between the ages of 15 to 65. Again, I do go outside that range, but that's primarily my patient population. And in that patient population, acne, hyperpigmentation, hair loss, seborrheic dermatitis, keloids, those are going to be kind of in those top ones.
Right.
So for skin, for hair, and I'll just kind of drill down into that a little bit. For hair, a lot of times people don't know what they have coming in. They just know that either my hair's thinning, I have bald spots, or I just suddenly lost it along my edges and they just came out. And most of the time, sometimes it can be sudden, sometimes it can be gradual. A lot of time, by the time an individual comes to the office for hair loss, especially if it's more generalized thinning, they've already lost maybe 50% of their hair.
Wow.
If it's localized, like frontal traction alopecia, they've probably lost a significant amount for them to notice it. But again, there are some genetic things that I think that make us a little bit more prone to those conditions as opposed to lighter skin types. But yeah.
But I'm wondering, I'm not saying there's not genetic roles, but I feel like traction alopecia, what's your viewpoint? I saw a research paper talking about the way that we are caring for our hair is causing a lot of our traction alopecia. I remember I lost a lot of my hair about 4 years ago in the middle, and it was due to my dermatologist, which was a Black female. Yeah, shout out to another one. But anyway, she did a biopsy, and she was like, yeah, there's some there's inflammatory cells. So there's different types of alopecia. So guys, for those of you know what alopecia means you're losing your hair, and your hair follicles are dying for some kind of reason. Sometimes it's genetic, right? Especially for males. It comes through your mother's line. And sometimes your white blood cells literally eat your follicles. It's an inflammation or some kind of inflammatory allergic response. And sometimes it's literally a physical damage to the area. And I literally I just stopped perming my hair. When I found out that, it was happening, I stopped permanent my hair. And like my hairdresser at the time was like, oh, it's in your genetics. I'm like, no, because my mother was doing the same improper treatments to her hair, braiding, jerry curl, perming, tight braiding. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to do it anymore. And I have a full head of hair. It all grew back. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't genetic. Because as soon as I stopped my behavior, the hair came back. And I'm wondering if, I want your opinion. I'm feeling that, the weaving and the braiding and the really, really tight braiding and the pulling and the chemicals that we're putting in our hair may be causing alopecia that we wouldn't have if we didn't do those things. I saw they have all these videos of remaking people on TV, on Facebook, and this woman who has this massive bald spot, and then they weaved her hair and they're like, oh, it looks so nice. And I'm like, well, what caused the massive amounts of alopecia? I don't know. What's your take on it?
Yeah. So yeah, it is a major issue. It's a major issue, especially in Black women. So I'm glad that you definitely, define that, because a lot of times I have patients who come and say, oh, I'm coming in, I have this hair loss, and my hairdresser said I might have alopecia, but I know I don't have alopecia. Do I have alopecia? Alopecia is just a general medical term
for hair loss. That's what
medical term.
They think they have a disease, like they think.
Right. So
which it is a disease.
Yeah, but you have to kind of drill down and say what's causing it, because there are many different types of alopecia. But if you have hair loss, you have alopecia.
Right.
So we generally divide alopecia into scarring and non-scarring alopecia.
Right.
Okay? So non-scarring is going to be like your male pattern hair loss, your female pattern hair loss. That's what you're kind of referring to as far as to your genetics. You can have general thinning. We call that telogen effluvium. That can be like stress-induced, medication-induced after surgery.
Right.
Sometimes after people have a baby.
The hair.
Shedding. Okay, but that's non-scarring. It usually resolves. And then traction alopecia, interestingly enough, can be non-scarring. Okay, if it's early, yeah, it can be reversible. Okay, it's when it's late it crosses over to the other category of scarring alopecias. Okay, and so scarring alopecias are where there has been so much inflammation at that level of the hair follicle that it has caused that hair follicle to scar. And so if you've ever had a scar, if you've ever had a cut, does the hair regrow in that area where the scar was?
No.
Never regrows once it's scarred. So, that's one thing about traction alopecia is that if you can get it early, it can be reversible. Once it's been present for years, it's usually irreversible unless unless transplantation occurs.
Right.
The other very, very common form of scarring alopecia in African American women is CCCA. You might have heard of that, central centrifugal cicatricial alopecia.
That's the one that like circles the crown, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. So central, and right here in the crown area. Centrifugal means that it usually expands. Cicatricial means scarring. Okay, and then the alopecia. That is probably even more common than traction. They're kind of neck and neck, but that's one where we're learning a little bit more about the causes of it. So you're asking, traction alopecia versus CCCA, which I'll just kind of talk about those because they're the two most common cause of hair loss in African American women. Traction alopecia is strictly due to hairstyling practices. Okay, 100%. It is, traction alopecia is not a genetic thing. The study that you might have been referring to came out of, I think it was Johns Hopkins.
Yes, it was. Yep.
Yeah, it was about 3 years ago, I think, where they had done a study, and they basically looked at and kind of categorized high-risk hairstyles, medium-risk hairstyles, and low-risk hairstyles. Okay, so your low-risk hairstyles are going to be natural, loose, nothing tying it back. Loose ponytails probably fall into that category as well. Moderate risk hairstyles are going to be natural hair that you either braid, do sew-in weaves, anything that's pulling tension. Exactly. On natural hair is still considered a moderate risk hairstyle. Does that mean that necessarily you should never do moderate risk hairstyles? No. Okay, but it means in moderation.
Moderation, absolutely.
Yeah. So the recommendations of that study was, don't leave in, braids longer than 2 to 3 months. I generally tend to lean more towards the 2 months. 3 months is a little long for me, but I'm just saying what that article said.
Yeah, I'm going to my braid lady in December, like, cause it's good to rest the hair. You know what I'm saying?
Do larger diameter braids. So
right.
When you a lot of the mini braids, that's excess hair and excess weight on the hair. And so the moderate risk are kind of that. One other thing was dread. Well, I don't like to call them dreads. I know sometimes people call them
locks.
Yes. So locks can be a moderate risk hairstyle also. Usually when they're shorter, they're not as dangerous, but as they get longer and heavier, that length and that weight of that hair pulls, and people get a lot of traction alopecia in that crown area.
Mm-hmm.
And then high risk hairstyles are going to be when you're doing all of what I just mentioned. You're doing braids, you're doing sew-ins, but you're doing it on a relaxed hair. Okay?
Right.
So relaxed hair is already in a very weakened state, and then you're putting tension on top of that. There's no way you can win with that. Okay, so you know, if you are going to be relaxed, then you need to do, you know, try to do as low risk as you can, meaning keep your hair loose, keep things off of it. I probably would not routinely recommend to do braids or sew-ins if you have relaxed hair. If you have, you know, if you have natural hair. And also with relaxed hair, you need to keep heat off of it. Okay.
Keep what off? Keep what?
Heat.
Right. But the thing is, what they do is they relax your hair, and on top of that, they flat blow dry it, and then they flat iron it. Mm-hmm. And some of us are doing that every 6 weeks. You know?
Do it every week. Well,
no. The perming.
Yes.
And with me, man, if my friends remember, they must have died and gone to heaven. I don't believe in dying and going to heaven, but you get my point. That when they saw that I went natural, because I was very much relaxed, and I would every week flat iron, curling iron my hair. Yeah, I would put heat on my hair, plus relaxer, plus braids. Yeah, I know why. And this awareness is what can stop people early from getting, you know, the traction alopecia turning into scarring. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you know, that's why that's important. That's where the hairstyles really come into play as far as you know, and again, a lot of times people think just kind of frontal hairline, but traction can occur anywhere, you know, throughout the scalp. You know, exactly what you said. You know, the crown area, it can be, you know, the occipital scalp, which is towards the back. And then the other thing is with our children also, you know, not styling their hair, pulling their hair too tight. I get it all the time where parents will say, oh, my daughter's hair is not too tight. If you see little bumps on the scalp, little papules around the hair follicles, even if the child is not complaining, it's too tight.
It's too tight.
It's too tight. And studies have shown that recurrent tight hairstyles can affect your hair up to 10 years after you stop it.
Wow.
So sometimes people say, oh, I don't do that anymore. I did it when I was a teenager, but now I have all this hair loss. Well, that's because you still did it.
Yeah.
It was just a while back.
Yeah. Like even, you know, the curl pattern, like my hair was growing straight for a while because I feel like it was just the way over time. You know, many of us, including myself, had our hair straightened from I was 8 years old. So 8 years old to what, 30, maybe 36. I have been doing this, you know? Yeah. And it's not just me. And the knowledge of this is so crucial. But, you know, I didn't get this information until I got a biopsy from my dermatologist.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also very important because, you know, you can try to, you know, treat things at home, but it is also important to get a correct diagnosis.
Right.
Because a lot of times people think, oh, it may be this, it may be that. Sometimes we're surprised, you know, when we biopsy. You know, kind of going back to or crossing over and talking about CCCA, because we were talking about that was one of the primary causes of scarring alopecia in African American women. That's when we first, or the person who first coined the name for it, they called it hot comb alopecia. So they said, oh, it's because Black women are using a hot comb with oil and it's running down and burning the hair follicles and scarring it that way. And then they
but
said,
it wasn't that?
No. Yeah. And then they said, well, it's due to, maybe other hairstyling practices, maybe relaxers. We just didn't know. But interestingly enough, this year, there was a study done in the New England Journal of Medicine. You can actually look it up. there was a gene that was identified for CCCA. And they found that they feel like it does pass down in an autosomal dominant pattern. And so that's when where they're actually finding that the hairstyles may not play as much of a role in the inheritance of CCCA as they do with traction alopecia.
Okay.
But again, the pattern of that is a little bit different, as we described previously. African Americans in general, some, I won't say everybody, but there are some that are thought to have a tendency towards fibrosis. So we get keloids.
For keloids, yeah. So fibrosis, guys, is like when you get a cut, your skin has cells, and you heal itself. If it cells will grow over, but if you get too deep of a cut, sometimes your face and your skin has this fiber called collagen. That's what makes our skin so tight and nice. And when we cut ourselves, sometimes, especially in African Americans, the fiber grows too much, and so we get this big scar. We call it a keloid, but it's just because it's excessive. Too much of that collagen fiber and other fibers are growing rather than just the cells reproducing and healing itself. And yeah. So because of that, that's what they're starting to see genetically in our scalp.
Right. So they're thinking that with CCCA, it may fall under a category of a condition where people who have this tendency pro-fibrosis. Okay, so other examples are like fibroid tumors.
Fibroids, we have fibroids.
A lot of African American women have fibroid tumors, and they did a study, I think a couple of years ago, where they found that there was actually a correlation. People who had CCCA tended to have fibroid tumors, uterine fibroids, myeloma. So, there's still a lot of research that needs to be done as far as CCCA and kind of understanding a little bit better, why that particular form of scarring alopecia is so rampant in our communities. But we need the research dollars, and we need the researchers.
Yeah. So that's another field that people can go into, just studying it biologically. Yeah. All right. So last question. What should we do better for our skin and hair?
What should we do better for our skin and hair? Well, I think going back to the hair, we kind of touched on it a little bit. Avoid heat as much as possible, direct heat. So blow dryers, flat irons, very, very hard on the hair, weaken the hair shaft. Indirect heat is not as bad. So that's, roller sets, kind of sitting under a hot dryer.
That takes so much work. That's so much work. I can't remember the last time I put heat on my hair, probably 4 or 5 years ago. It's a fun.
But it's a lot more, it's a lot safer. If you choose to straighten. And then, definitely giving your hair a break from extensions and trying to avoid tight hairstyles. I think we touched on that as far as hair. As far as skin in general, I would say probably, again, in my practice, the most common thing people worry about a lot is acne. And so, acne in women can be, especially adult women, can be somewhat multifactorial. There can definitely be a hormonal component to it. If there is a hormonal component to it, nothing you do particularly is going to help other than probably getting on some medication to help that. But diet-wise, staying away from dairy, staying away from sugar, staying away from high-carb diet. Those are the 3 things that we've kind of noticed that it can contribute to acne. Making sure that you're using a gentle cleanser on a daily basis. Avoid scrubs. I'm not a big proponent of exfoliators.
Really?
Just kind of imagine if you kind of
scraped your face.
Yeah, scratch kind of the surface of something over and over again. You're going to create a low level of inflammation. And anytime you have inflammation in skin of color, it can lead to pigmentation. So I'm not saying that you should never do it. I just don't know that you need to do it on a daily basis.
Okay.
Moisturizers, of course, are very important. Sunscreen is important.
Even for black folk. Even for black folk, guys, put some sunscreen.
Not so much from a skin cancer prevention standpoint, but it's mainly more for issues of pigmentation, is what I usually tell my patients. So if you have hyperpigmentation, you're trying to get it better, and you're not wearing sunscreen,
it ain't gonna work.
You're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah. So hyperpigmentation is like when you have more darkness on one side than the other and stuff like that.
Yeah. So hyperpigmentation can be the result of inflammation. So say for easiest example, you get a bug bite.
A pimple or or a pimple.
Yeah.
When
it resolves,
you see that dark spot there.
Leaves a dark spot. That's called post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. Yeah. Extremely common in our skin.
Yep.
So we definitely have treatments for it, but sun protection is important to in helping that too.
Interesting.
And there's multiple other things, but I generally tell my patients, if you have a good cleanser, good moisturizer, good sunscreen, those are the three main things. Retinols, which are going to be your derivatives of vitamin A, retin-A, that's more the prescription form of it. That helps does help with exfoliation, skin tone turnover. It's anti-aging, anti-wrinkles. I think that should be part of everyone's regimen. It's usually used at nighttime. There are some over-the-counter forms of it, but you can also get prescription forms of it also.
Cool. I'm so happy I was able to talk to you. It's been a while coming, but it was great. A great interview. It's so good to see a Black female dermatologist. You can be a mentor in multiple ways. I know one of the people I know who watches Phenomenal STEMist is excited because their daughter wants to be a dermatologist. So she said, I'm definitely going to watch, and she's going to have her kid watch. So I really appreciate you coming on. It's always good to have what I call end games, because there's so many people who want to be something. They want to be an MD, they want to be a nurse, but unfortunately they don't see people that look like them. And when things get hard, this is what happens. When things get real hard, if they don't see someone who's accomplished the goal, they'll feel like, well, maybe this is not for people like me.
Yeah.
So for the fact that you're out here and we're seeing Dr. Danique Woolfolk as a dermatologist, private practicing dermatologist, I'm so proud of you. I am the Phenomenal STEMist, and so is this way, the other way, she. I'm a little backwards here. I'm the Phenomenal STEMist, and so is she. Thank you so much, Danique, for being on with me.
This was fun.
All right. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Oh.